first year postpartum. I have my notes on my laptop here next to me, so please give me some grace if you see me glancing over quite a bit. So it's been a minute since I recorded. Before I move forward, I want to make sure that you also experience lots of tingles, so I will be messing around with this mic cover while I ramble about. So, it has been a while since I recorded the birth story, so to be honest, I don't quite remember where I left off, but I think the key thing here is that my daughter was very small when she was born. She weighed less than like the 2 percentile for her age. That's like newborn, but I was induced a little bit early, so for like the amount of weeks that she was, she was a bit small. And because she weighed less than the 2 percentile, they had to check her sugar levels throughout our hospital stay. So, after I gave birth, my husband and I and the baby were moved to another room, like a recovery room. And this was like the middle of the night. And the cafeteria for the hospital was already closed. So the nurse gave me just like a little, like almost like a boxed lunch. I think it had like a turkey sandwich and like Jello or something. She gave my husband Jello. Baby girl slept amazing that first night, and I heard, like, you know, parents get tricked into thinking like this is gonna be easy because the baby sleeps great the first night, but that's because the baby's also like exhausted from the whole experience of coming into this world. But yeah, so she slept great that night. They had to, as I mentioned, check her sugar levels throughout the stay, and I can't remember, like, it was every X amount of hours that they would come and like poke her little, like the heel of her foot and like draw blood, and that was horrible. But luckily everything came back normal and she was great. Although the babies slept great, you know, you still have to wake them up in the beginning every 3 hours to feed them. If they're not waking up on their own, and because my daughter was like so underweight and like tiny, so I set an alarm, you know, for every 3 hours, and I would wake up and like it was fine. We did try breastfeeding. I really wanted to breastfeed, and I don't know why I thought like this would just be a really natural and easy process, although all the classes I had taken like beforehand, before the baby came, and like things I had heard, everyone told me like it can actually be kind of hard and not everyone can like do it or stick with it, and I was still like shocked that my daughter and I had trouble. She like was not latching well. I just remember feeling like I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm like holding this baby there and like I don't know if she's eating or not. So that day we just had a bunch of doctors coming in and out of the room. They were checking on the baby, they were checking on me, and you know, you have to like document everything. How many dirty diapers is she having? How often is she eating? Like how long does she feed for? And like we had a lactation consultant come in as well. And I think the first time that the lactation consultant stopped by, my daughter was asleep and like had just fallen asleep, so they didn't want to wake her up. So it was just like me and her kind of talking. And like she went over also like this is a pump, these are the settings and whatever, if you want to use that. Then what else? My mom had actually flown in like the night before I was induced, or maybe the morning of, and the plan was for her to stay, I think it was a month. So that day she arrived and like she was kind of visiting us a little bit, but she was also really mindful about giving my husband a nighttime alone with the baby. Yeah, so that's kind of all I remember from that day. That night was horrible, like not good. It felt like my daughter was like cluster feeding, like she would latch on for a little bit and like eat and stop and then eat and stop, but like I don't know, the whole thing was horrible, and I And they actually said that, like, the minute they rolled her out of the room and into the nursery, she fell asleep. So I don't know if it was just, like, the smell of me there that she wanted to be with me or what it was, but she fell asleep right away and then stayed asleep until the nurse, like, rolled her back in 3 hours later to be fed. The next day, my husband's family came to visit. It was my sister-in-law, and my mother and father-in-law, I think. They met us at the hospital. And I was so beyond stressed. Like, I had just given birth, like a day or two, a day and a half ago, and I'm like a hot mess. My hair is all knotted up. Like, I'm feeling like junk, and I can't figure out the breastfeeding situation with my daughter, and so I'm just like stressed. They were really sweet. They brought flowers, and like they took my mom out to eat, and so that was nice. So she was actually able to like go somewhere instead of just eating hospital food or hanging out at my house alone. But yeah, they came and they met the baby, and that was really nice. They took some. My sister-in-law takes photos like as a hobby, but they're like really good photos. They're like professional photos. So we had photos taken there at the hospital of my daughter, and like me and my husband a little bit, like mostly in the background. But again, I was looking like a hot mess. Like, my hair was all knotted up from labor, and I hadn't brushed it, and who knows how long. Like, it was horrible. Like, at this point, I was ready to go home, and I had told our nurses, like, okay, what do we need to do so we can get discharged today? And the nurse on duty was nice. Like, she told me, like, are you sure you guys want to go? Like, I know you haven't gotten the hang of feeding yet, like feeding the baby, and I just, there's no rush. I don't want you to go home feeling like unprepared, like all this stuff. And in my head, she was telling me, like, you are an absolutely horrible mother, and so we cannot let you leave. And like the minute she walks out of the room, I start crying, and I tell my husband, like, she thinks we're horrible parents. Like, she thinks I can't do this. And like, at that point, I had the lactation consultant like come back to and give me extra tips, and she thought maybe my daughter had a tongue tie or something. Like, I don't know what it was. I ended up giving my daughter formula, and I felt so sad because my daughter like was starving. Like, that's why she was crying nonstop, and she like drank a lot of formula and was finally like quiet and happy, and I just started crying again because I thought, like, wow, the one thing I'm supposed to do, feed her, I can't do. So that was an emotional roller coaster. Sorry, I'm like jumping around again. It's been a while, so I don't remember everything. But as I said, my sister-in-law and my mother and father-in-law took my mom out to eat, and when they did that, my husband and I had the nurse help us give my daughter her first bath, and so they showed us how to do it, and it was just like a really nice moment. Afterwards, to regulate the body's temperature, they have you do like the skin to skin again, and that felt so sweet. Like, I'm laying there in the hospital bed, and my daughter's on me, like freshly washed, and my husband is there, and he ends up like falling asleep, and she's asleep, and I just felt really like happy and full of love, I guess. I don't know, it's sweet. But yeah, then they got back, and we packed up, and they, rolled me out in a little wheelchair. We got in the car, and we drove home. Back home, like I said, my mom was staying with us for a month, and then my dad ended up coming too for like a week, but I can't remember if he was already there. I don't think he was there yet. When? and so we ended up mostly feeding her formula for the first month. I would try breastfeeding, but like it felt like she wasn't latching on, she wasn't really eating, I didn't really have milk, and like, I don't know. But I think the stressful part was just having like, I don't know, everyone was there, so I felt like I had to put up a happy face and feel fine and be fine with everyone giving me tips on how to breastfeed and like hold her like this and do that, and I just felt so like lost and frustrated, and like I didn't know how to say anything, and like then I felt even when I did say something that was just worse. Like I remember one time I told my mom I was feeling really frustrated about the whole breastfeeding situation, and I think she told my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and then everyone's trying to console me and be like, it's fine, but that would make me want to cry more. So it was just me, like I just didn't know how to process everything. But I mean, other than that, it was fine. It was nice, like having people that would take care of my daughter or like cook and clean. And we got some newborn pictures taken of us too. Again, like I felt like so not like myself. I wanted to do like my hair and my makeup and look cute for newborn pictures, but I'm exhausted, you know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm emotionally a wreck, and so I think I just brushed my hair and put it up and like called it a day. And the pictures were mostly, you know, about the baby, like focused on the baby. And the few pictures that you could see my husband and I, mostly it'd be like our hands or like, I don't know. The ones that you could see, like all of us, they came out really, really nice. So I was still happy I got them done. But I remember just thinking like, holy crap, who am I? Like I do not feel like myself. To be completely honest, the first 3 months were really, really difficult for me. It was just an adjustment, I guess. I love sleeping, so it was a really big like reality shock when I realized like I am never going to sleep again. It just like, I don't know, you think it's not that big of a deal, but it really gets to you when you're waking up. You know, at first we, you know, would have to wake up my daughter every 3 hours, but then like she would get to the point where like she knew like, yo, I'm ready to eat. She would wake up, and so you're, you know, getting up with them and changing the diaper and like giving her food. And my husband was off the first couple of months, and so he would help me, and that was great. Like he would change her diaper, or he would go get like a bottle ready or whatever it was. But it was still just so exhausting. I feel really blessed that my mom was here for the first month, and if I'm to have kids again, I would definitely want that again. She helped us so much. Like she did all the cooking, she did all the cleaning. Like I felt like she would spoil me too. Every once in a while, if the baby was asleep, she'd be like, "Do you want a massage?" I'm like, "Yes, please, Mom." So it was just really nice. And like, even though she was so helpful, she also was really respectful of my husband and I. And like, sometimes it was like a little too much. Like she really didn't want us to feel like she was being like that overly involved mother-in-law, and like it wasn't like that at all. So there were even times where I'd be like, "Mom, you can come hang out with us, like it's fine, like I want you here, I want you to spend time with the baby, like it's okay, you don't just have to cook and clean." But yeah, then when my husband returned to work, it was like I said, the first 3 months were really difficult for me, and my husband went back after like month or two, and so that third month was like really hard for me. I told him that I didn't need his help and didn't want his help at all at night, that I would handle it all because I wasn't going to work, and he had to wake up, you know, crazy early and was working long hours. And so I said, like, I've got it. But I was so freaking tired, like so exhausted, and I felt like I had no clue what I was doing. I remember one time my daughter just kept like crying and crying and crying and crying, and I didn't know what to do. And my husband didn't hear her because I think at this point we had already moved her to her room. In the beginning, she slept in a bassinet in our room, but then we moved her to a crib in her room. I think it was around this time, and so my husband, like, and he's a deep sleeper in general, and became even more of a deep sleeper since becoming a dad. But he like didn't wake up, and I should have gone and like told him I needed some help, but I refused to, and so I ended up just putting her back in the crib for a minute, and I went into the other room, and I just cried and cried crying, and the baby stops crying, and she like looks at me like, lady, what are you crying about? And then she starts crying more, and so the whole thing was just a mess. Yeah, I think it didn't help that breastfeeding wasn't going great in the beginning. I just, again, thought like this was gonna all come natural and be easy, and it just wasn't for me. I really didn't have any milk, and my daughter wasn't latching great, and I think I went to like a lactation consultant again in person afterwards, and had her look at how I was doing it and weigh my daughter before and after to see how much she was eating, and it was okay, like that helped, but I didn't go again. And where was I going with this? I remember, honestly, if it wasn't for my husband, I probably would not have ended up following through with the breastfeeding journey. I ended up breastfeeding my daughter for a full year, but I would have quit like the first couple of months if it wasn't for him. He was really like encouraging me to pump and like pushing me to pump, and not in a like a mean way, like you have to do this, but he would tell me, he's like, Lisa, like you said you wanted to do this, so do this, like this is what I found. Like he would do research and be like, I found this information about power pumping and that can help increase your supply, like make sure you're hydrated, are you drinking water, like let me bring you water. And I remember sometimes I would be so annoyed when he'd be like, okay, it's time to pump, but like that helped increase my supply, and it helped me get to a point where my daughter was exclusively nursing after maybe 3 months. There were a couple other, I have some other notes on here about going dairy free, but I will talk about that I'll talk about it now. So, my daughter had like tummy issues the first month. Like she would cry a lot, and I don't know, I related it. I thought it was tummy issues, like you could hear her stomach like, actually, we'll use this. Not quite like that, but you could hear her stomach like growling and making noises, and she was like pushing, and like it was extra like gassy, and like crying and crying and crying. I think this was when my husband was still on paternity leave. I remember him looking up a lot of like different tummy massages we could be doing, and I would bring it up to the doctor like every time my daughter had a doctor's visit, which in the beginning is like right after you get out of the hospital, like right after you're discharged and you go home. A week later, 2 weeks later, like you see him a lot in the beginning. But I feel like a lot of it just came off as me being like an overly worried first time mom, so they didn't really take my concerns seriously. But I remember I was doing a lot of research, and it came up that she might be like have a dairy allergy, or be sensitive to dairy. And I remember one time after, side note, our neighbors were so sweet during that time, and we had like 3 or 4 different neighbors stop by and give us meals or like gift cards to food places, and that was so sweet. I did not expect it at all, and it made a huge difference. It was really kind. And one of my friends actually, who lives in like the opposite side of the states than I do, she messaged me a little bit after I was postpartum, maybe like a couple weeks or a month, like congratulating us and asking like, hey, what's your favorite food place in the area? We want to send you a gift card. And they sent us a gift card, and that was also so sweet. And now whenever I have friends who have babies, like that's what I do, because that made like a huge difference in the postpartum journey. So if you're ever wondering what to get friends who are postpartum, like send them a food like gift card to a restaurant or DoorDash or something, because can't go wrong with that. Anyway, back to like the breastfeeding journey story. So one of our neighbors got us a gift card to, I think it was like Bob Evans, and for those who don't have it in their area, it's almost like Kentucky Fried Chicken, I guess, like maybe, or Boston Market, but it has like, I think what we ended up ordering was like breaded chicken, mashed potatoes, buttered corn, like it had a lot of dairy in it. And that night my daughter it was like the worst night we had yet, and the next morning I called her pediatrician. I'm like, I don't know if she has a dairy allergy or not, but like this is what I ate. This was her reaction. like, yeah, sure, go for it. And so I started, I cut out dairy completely. Okay, I had to move how I was sitting because my feet fell asleep. Hopefully this new angle doesn't bother you. But yeah, I cut out dairy completely, and like, I did not realize how much food has dairy. Like, everything has dairy, it feels like. And like, I don't know, like, I had to be reading labels and looking at labels, and like, I have so much respect for people who are vegan or are dairy free or have any type of dietary restrictions, and like actually follow what you gotta cut out. I don't know if going dairy free like made a difference. My daughter, like, I could definitely see a difference in my daughter's like reactions and behavior, and she became less colicky, but I don't know if that's just because she was getting a little bit older and her tummy had like figured it out, or if it's because I cut out dairy but I was too scared to reintroduce it, so I left it out of my diet. I ended up joining a Facebook group for moms who were also dairy free and breastfeeding, and that was really, really helpful. It helped me feel less alone, and I could just comment down there, read a post like, hey, I cried the other day because I couldn't have cheesecake, and people could validate my feelings or give me like ideas. If I said like, hey, I have no clue what to eat, I want like a nice little snack, and that's how I came across I think it's called Heavenly Hunks. You can buy them at Costco. So delicious. And that was like my go-to snack when breastfeeding, and it just helped to make the whole journey so much better. I think through that Facebook group, I also found a website for going dairy free. I think it's actually called like Go Dairy Free or something like that, but basically, you type in like a restaurant's name or a fast food place's name, and it'll give you all the options on the menu that are dairy free. It was so helpful because, like, I think there was only a handful of restaurants that have dairy free French fries, and so it was just nice knowing like what was safe when I was going out to eat, and that was a big game changer. Like I said, the breastfeeding journey, I think after that just went amazing. I got to a point where I never got to a point where I was an overproducer. I was literally like an underproducer in the beginning, and then like just enough for the rest of the breastfeeding experience. I never got to a point where I had like a huge freezer stash. My daughter would drink anything that I pumped, and then eventually I stopped pumping and I stopped offering her bottles, and I just nursed her. It was an extremely difficult journey, especially in the beginning, but it was so worth it for me. I can't tell you how many times, like, as she was getting older and like breastfeeding was no longer painful or a struggle, and we just like connected, and she would be nursing and like looking at me or like holding my little hand, like playing with my pinky, or it just felt so sweet, and like, I don't know, it was a sweet moment. Don't get me wrong, there were still horrible moments too. She had bitten me like a couple of times towards the end of the breastfeeding journey. She used to like pinch my underarms here, like playing with it while she was nursing, and that would hurt so bad. It made me so mad. But overall, it was an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful that I was able to do it, and like happy that I stuck with it. I actually ended up getting a breast milk necklace done from Keepsakes by Grace. I have an unboxing video of it somewhere on my channel. I think it was just like a short clip, but really beautiful, and I just wanted to commemorate that whole journey because it was overall a good experience. As I mentioned earlier, my hormones were all over the place. In the beginning, I would wake up like absolutely covered in sweat, like covered in sweat. It was disgusting, and I smelled disgusting. I also think, I was never diagnosed, but I also think I had postpartum anxiety. I would wake up like gasping and like terrified, like, oh my god, where's my daughter, but she'd be like right there in the bassinet with us. We did not go sleep when she was younger, and I say when she was younger because now that she's over a year, she has slept in her bed a couple of times, more than I'd like to admit. But like, as a baby, I was really like paranoid, and I'm like, she cannot fall asleep in her bed. I'll fall asleep here and I'll squish her. Like, we can't. If you're co-sleeping, like, I'm not shaming you in any way. I've actually heard and like read things that it's like supernatural, not like alien or anything, but it's very natural, and like there are things you can do to really minimize any risk of issues. I'm not a doctor in any way, and I'm not encouraging you to go sleep if you're not go sleeping. Like, just do whatever works for you and your family, okay? That's all I'll say about that. But yeah, I would have like super vivid nightmares, and I would wake up like wondering where my daughter was when she was like right there. The whole thing was like horrible. It did calm down a bit. Like, this was mostly freshly postpartum. It did calm down a bit, but then months later, I ended up again starting to lose like a bunch of hair. That was another one for freshly postpartum. I lost so much hair. I have like bald spots here that are like just finally starting to grow in. Like, I have these baby hairs here. But like maybe how many months later? It must have been like maybe 8 months postpartum or something. I started losing hair a lot again, like a lot, and started getting like night sweats again, and I was just having issues with my hormones, and I already was getting my thyroid checked out every year because maybe like 6 years ago now they had found a couple nodules, like a doctor found nodules, and my family has a history of thyroid issues, and so I had an ultrasound done and they found nodules, and I was getting, I can't remember if it was like yearly or every 2 years, but I was getting ultrasounds done on my thyroid, and the time was up for that, and so they checked it out, and it looked abnormal, like different than before, and different enough that my primary doctor, who issued the order for the thyroid, referred me to an endocrinologist. So I live in a small town, and it was impossible to find a specialist near me. Like, the one doctor in my town wasn't taking new patients, and so the next closest doctor was about an hour away, and when I called them, they were fully booked out for like a couple months, and I remember feeling so stressed out. Like, maybe this was actually closer to 6 months, because I remember my mom came to visit, and I think my daughter was around 6 months at that time, and when she left, that was when I had the appointment. Like, a little bit after that, I had dropped my mom off at the airport, and I was going to go right to the doctor's appointment. The airport was already like 2 hours away, but I had started driving there with like plenty of time, like driving out of the airport to the appointment, and then I get stuck in traffic. There was like a huge accident on the freeway, and it's bumper to bumper traffic, and it like an hour passes by and I've barely moved anything, and before I know it, like, I could tell from the GPS, like, the time's just getting later and later until I got to the point where I was going to miss my appointment. And I was like so upset. I called the doctor's office. They weren't even opened yet, and I was still like a couple hours out, and I told them like that I was stuck in traffic and I wasn't going to make it, but they could please let me know when they were next available. And after that, I hung up, and I just started crying because I felt like I was finally going to get some answers. Like, I was just an emotional wreck, like a hormonal wreck, and I was really thinking like, I'm gonna go to the doctor and they're going to tell me how to get better, and like figure out what the heck is going on. And I had already waited a while for this appointment, and so I felt like I missed my chance and I was gonna have to wait like a bunch more. So I'm still stuck in traffic at this point, and they finally called me back and they said, like, we actually had a cancellation for a little bit after your appointment. Do you want to come then? It was maybe like an hour after my original appointment time, and I'm like, yes, I'm going there right now. So I end up going there, and the doctor checks me out, and she's like checking my thyroid. So I ended up getting a bunch of tests done, like blood work done, and more ultrasounds taken of my thyroid. And I was first diagnosed with just like pregnancy thyroiditis, where your thyroid and your hormones are all like crazy after pregnancy. And I think that was what was causing like all the hair loss and night sweats and stuff. But then my blood work ended up showing that I actually have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid. And all of the symptoms that I was showing were kind of like opposite of Hashimoto's, but I have read that like you can get like pregnancy, like postpartum can trigger pregnancy, thyroiditis, and then Hashimoto's, like I said, that's an autoimmune disease, and like jumpstart Hashimoto's, like you can have the antibodies for it. That's how they test for it, like that you have the antibodies for it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your hormone levels are out of whack, but like pregnancy, like your levels are all over the place, and that can kind of like kickstart. I'm not explaining this very well at all. Do your own research. The doctor actually recommended a website, thyroid.org. I haven't checked it out recently, but it was helpful to just kind of get an understanding for what was going on. My hormone levels were a little bit off, so I got started on some medication that I have to take daily. I don't like taking a daily medication, but it definitely helped dysregulate my hormones again, and overall I had an amazing experience with this doctor. It was the first time in a while that I felt I had a good experience at the doctor's office. Like I felt like she was actually listening to me, and like, I don't know, just listening to everything I have to say. I feel like oftentimes I'm just rushed when I go to a doctor's appointment, and like they ask questions and don't even wait for me to answer, or if I do answer and they don't like or believe the answer, they come up with their own scenarios. And like I was nervous going to a doctor and like not sure what to expect, but she was absolutely amazing and really listened to me, and like I just felt comfortable. Unfortunately, she actually is moving to a different practice, and I'll no longer be seeing her, but I'll have to find a new doctor that I like. But last time I spoke with her, like things were going really well, and it made a huge difference. Taking that daily medication, and I think she had told me that the doctor had told me that if things kept looking great, I could actually like stop the medication, which I was supposed to find out at my next appointment. But now they're getting a new doctor. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It went great. Other than that, postpartum was fine. Like the rest of the year was fine. I'm like trying to think how much detail to get into for big milestones. Like at 6 months, you know, we started feeding my daughter solids, and like that experience. I don't think I'm gonna go into a lot of detail there. I think with this video, I really wanted to focus on like me and like my mental health and physical health during that first year postpartum. I will probably create a separate video on like starting solids journey and things like that. But yeah, the rest of the first year was pretty uneventful. I was really lucky that I was able to take the first year off work and stay with my daughter. It was an emotional roller coaster left and right. I remember my last month of maternity leave, I was starting to like finally get into a better routine. We would go out for walks like once or twice a day, and I remember thinking like I wasted my whole year of maternity leave. I was like so stressed out, or I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and like I finally got to a point where I could like breathe and just enjoy the time with my daughter. But it was fine. For her first birthday, we didn't do anything crazy. My husband and I are both pretty introverted, so we don't have like a large group of friends. We're also pretty new to here, like this area. We didn't grow up here or anything, so we're not super close to anyone. Some of my family members were able to come visit, and then most of my husband's immediate family lives pretty close to us, like within a couple hours away, so we were able to get the family together. I spent like the day at the zoo with my family, and like it was fun taking my daughter there, although she was like still too little to really enjoy it. We took some like family pictures it takes her a little bit to like warm up to people, which is awesome. Like, girl, do your thing. But that can make it hard where like she doesn't see my family often. That was at her first year birthday. It was actually the first time she met, like, no, it wasn't the first time she met some of my family members, because I went to visit them at one point during my maternity leave. It was probably the second time she had seen a lot of those family members, and she like did not want to be held by anyone, was like sucking her thumb because she was stressed out with all the people, and so it wasn't like super fun, I guess I could say, but it was fine. My husband and I went out with my brother-in-law and my best friend who had come to visit for my daughter's birthday. We went out that night, and it was kind of nice to celebrate. Like, my husband and I survived our first year of parenthood, and it was like a nice little escape from everything. Then I went back to work, and I cannot put into words how much of an emotional wreck I was. The night before I went back to work, I was like sobbing. I nursed my daughter to sleep, and I just cried and cried and cried and cried, and I was so upset. Yeah, it was not great. My return to work was fine. Like, I don't know, it's going back to work. I'm super blessed that I have a job that allowed me to take a year off work, so I'm really grateful for that. It was an adjustment, obviously, to come back. It has its pros and cons. But yeah, we'll leave it at that. Okay, I think that summarizes everything that I wanted to talk about. If there's anything in particular that you want to hear more about, how actually, I'm going to say one more thing. I feel like throughout, especially in the beginning, throughout that first year, I was so stressed about my daughter meeting milestones. It is really difficult to not compare your baby to other babies and yourself as a parent to other parents. And it was probably some of like the anxiety as well, but I was so stressed out, and like social media can also feed into that, and I feel like Instagram and stuff, it picks up on your worries, and like it knows you're researching some stuff, and then it just keeps playing videos like related to that, so then you are even more hyper aware and stressed, and like it's too much. I experienced something similar too with Instagram or TikTok during my pregnancy, where I was really nervous about losing the baby, and like all these videos would come up about horrible situations, and it fed into that anxiety. So I encourage you that if you're going through something similar, it's okay to take a little social media break. I ended up downloading an app. I can't remember the exact name of it. If I remember to, I'll put it in the description, but you can look up like apps for this. But it was essentially like a milestone tracker, like milestone app, and it would tell you like each month what are some things that your baby should be doing. And I don't know if that stressed me out more or if it helped, but the good thing about it that I liked is that it had suggestions on different activities that you can do with your baby to like encourage them to build that skill that they were working on. And so in the beginning, this was especially helpful because when they're really little and not yet like walking around, like I didn't know what to do with my daughter. Like, how do I play with her, or how do I help her stretch and do what she needs to do to eventually roll on her own or crawl on her own or stand up, like whatever. And this gave cool activities to do to help encourage that, and also to just like help me think of stuff to do, because as I said, I was home for a year and sometimes I did not know what to do to keep her entertained, you know, although babies don't really need like entertainment, but you get what I mean. I was so stressed out because it took my daughter a while to like roll on her own and crawl, and now she is, and she was before healthy, like it was fine. It was just me freaking out, and I think it didn't help that I have 2 or 3 people on social media that I like went to high school with, or I know that had babies all around the same time. So then I would be checking like list of milestones that she should be completing, but it is so, like, every baby is different, and it's normal for some kids to take a little bit longer, or if they need a little bit extra help and need like physical therapy, like that's okay too. I ended up also following this account on Instagram, and I think it's like Motherhood and Milestones or something like that. It's M&M, and it's like a pediatric physical therapist, I think. And she would also say, like, okay, around this range, like this month age range, is when you should start seeing these skills. And on her page, she had like a really, really helpful chart that said, like, okay, typically around this month range is when you will start seeing this skill. And it would be, you know, rolling or crawling or whatever, sitting on their own, walking, standing up. And it would have like, if they are not doing this by this month and they are meeting like these mini milestones, and it would give examples, like, I can't even think of one right now, but it would just give examples of little things that like isn't the big milestone, but they're little things that need to happen and that show that your baby is working up to that skill to be able to do that. And so I would say, like, if they aren't, you know, showing any of these like mini stones by this month is when you should start looking to, you know, work with your doctor to see if it makes sense for you to get involved with, like, I can't remember what the acronym is, but it's like early intervention, and it's basically like physical therapy, and you're working with someone to, you know, do these things to help your baby get there. And that was really helpful for me. I would still stress sometimes because I would look at like the average range for when a baby was doing something, and I'd be like, my daughter's about to be 9 months and she's not hitting this skill yet. Now that I'm looking back on it, it's just so silly. Like, she was fine. She did things at her own rate, and like some babies focus on language and some babies focus on like motor skills, whatever it may be. And when they are 20 years old, no one is going to ask them, like, so at what month did you start crawling? Like, no. My daughter now is still amazing and kind, and she is so funny and brings me so much joy. She's running around now and like starting to talk, and it's a really, really fun age. I'd be lying if I said that there weren't hard moments. I'm still absolutely exhausted, and I will probably never sleep the same way again. I know for sure I'll never sleep like I did prior to being a parent, because now I have someone who, my whole purpose in life is to take care of this human being and keep him safe. And so of course I'm not going to sleep, at least not the same. But overall, like, she has brought me so much joy, and I'm so blessed to be her mom. Okay, I don't know why I got cheesy at the end. So, like I said, or was starting to say before I went off on this tangent, please let me know if there's anything in particular you're interested in hearing more about. Whether it is some of our most popular toys from when she was under a year, which, to be honest, I don't even know if I remember, but if you really want to know, I'll look through pictures or something. Or how it was for us when my daughter started solids. Any questions you might have at all, I am more than happy to talk to you about them. I mentioned earlier that my husband and I don't have a lot of friends out here, and even less friends who have kids our age here. I have some friends in other states that have kids, and some that are actually really close to my daughter's age, but I mean, I don't talk to them super often because life gets busy when you're an adult, and it's hard to, at least for me, to stay in like constant communication with someone. When I do see them, it's amazing, but it's really, really rare that I see them. So on the day-to-day basis, it can be really lonely. So I find something like this really helpful to give people like the real about, I don't know why that sounded weird, give people the real about how motherhood is, because it's not always like rainbows and butterflies, totally 100% worth it, but it's not like this beautiful picture people seem to paint. And I think talking about maybe some of the more harder moments can make it so someone else feels less alone. So even though I'm not talking to you like face to face, I hope you know that I am here for you, and whatever you're going through, you're not alone. You will get through this difficult era, and it is going to be so beautiful and worth it. You're doing absolutely amazing. You are a wonderful parent. No one is a perfect parent because no one is a perfect person, but as long as you love your child and like you're working with their intentions in mind and doing the best you can, like that's all you can ask for, and your best looks different every day. So be patient with yourself, show yourself some grace,